welcome to Emma's ESL English. Today I wanted to talk to you about how to address people. I think this is a little bit tricky. This came from a conversation with a student of mine who was repeatedly using a word to address me in our conversations. And I left it for a while mostly because I was a little confused. And finally, I realized that I couldn't leave this alone because if he was doing this I'm creating so much suspense. I realized that if he was doing this at work, then it could be super awkward. So I addressed it in the class and I said, "Why are you saying this?" Okay, now I have to tell you what it is. Drum roll. And he said, "Well, when you write a letter, you use this word when you write a letter. So I thought that was the word that you use to address people." The word is dear, obviously. Yeah, that's not how that works. Totally get it. It's one of those things that I would not have thought of because I'm a native speaker, but I can totally see how someone else would come to that understanding. But from a native speaker's perspective, it doesn't work at all because we do use dear to address people, but it's usually used by older people and usually to younger people who are very close to them, such as a grandmother to her granddaughter. So, "Did you have a nice time, dear?" might be something that a grandmother would say to her granddaughter. But you would not say in a business meeting, "Well, dear, I hope you're having a useful meeting." No, definitely not. So I can understand where this has come from, but I was a little concerned about it really because I knew how awkward it could make a business situation. I wanted to look at this in case you're in a business situation. This is especially for people who have to address clients or customers on a regular basis. So for example, if you work in a shop and you have customers coming and going and your customer starts asking questions and you want to address them but you don't have their name, then how can we address them? How can we talk to them? And similarly, if you have a client, that may be a little bit different because a client, usually you would have their name. So what I'll do is talk about these two slightly different situations. Definitely, I can say that this is very different depending on where you are in the world, because in America, there are accepted constructions of what you can say. Ideally, it's sir and ma'am. For example, go back to the idea of in a shop. "Can I help you, ma'am? Is everything okay, ma'am?" "Sir, it's over here. I can lead the way." So if we don't know their name, we can very easily use those things. And even if you had a client and you were in America, you could still refer to your client as a sir or a ma'am, and that would also be acceptable. However, I would say if you have their name, use it. If you know their family name is Smith, then you want to refer to them as Mr. Smith if it's a man. Women are more complicated. So if your client is Mr. Smith, then as you're having a conversation with him and he asks you some questions, you can say, "Yes, Mr. Smith, that is correct. Do you have any other questions, Mr. Smith?" If it's a woman, it's a little more tricky because you guys know we have this whole thing about women who are married and women who are not married. If they're married, they often use their married name, family name, which is often their husband's name in the West. So if she started off as Miss Jones as a 16-year-old girl, she got married and now she's Mrs. Smith as an adult woman. That's really, really common in the West. Usually if they are on LinkedIn and when they're writing their emails and all of those kind of places, they will be using the name they're comfortable with. So you don't need to know if that's their maiden name. That's the name we call it before you get married. Or if that's their married name, you don't need to know. If you take a look at a lot of their documentation, you will find it somewhere. Usually you will find it in their email signature. If it's a business company, you might find it on some LinkedIn stuff too. You might find it if you go to the website for the company and see if you can find them on the website for the company, you might find it there too. And remember, people don't always use these Mr., Miss, Mrs. They may have something else. For example, if they are a medical doctor, they might use doctor before their name, so it becomes Dr. Smith. If they are a PhD or above, they might use also Dr. Smith, they might use Professor Smith. So there's a lot of different variations that it could be depending on their qualifications, their line of work. But usually I would say check the signature of their email, check the company website, and last resort, if you really can't find anything, see if you can find their secretary or personal assistant, whoever you usually have to go through to get to them, and ask that person, how do they like to be addressed? We did talk a while back in another episode about when it's okay to switch to first names. So go listen to that podcast about that. In the UK, we don't tend to use mom because the Queen is mom. Yeah. The Queen has a lot of honorific phrases, and one of them is mom. And so we don't tend to refer to people using that. And what you'll find is if you go into a shop in the UK, depending on where you are in the UK, there are about 100 billion, that's an exaggeration, different terms that we use to address people. For example, somebody might call you Ducky. Let's see, what else do we have? Ducky, darling, blossom, chick. There's a bunch. I'll see if I can find something online with a list of them and you guys can take a look. But it's really, honestly, it's very funny. But I would say don't even think about it. Do not enter that territory. These terms are very, very regional specific. So unless you are from that town, you do not need to be using those terms. And most of them, I would say, are pretty old-fashioned in terms of how culturally acceptable they would be if you use them outside of that city or region. So, no, avoid them like the plague. Do not use them. But know that if you go somewhere in the UK, someone may call you Ducky. It may happen. I apologize. Okay, so if you have a client, try to use their name whenever you're addressing them. Before you meet them, you should know what their name is. If you don't know what their term is, like Mr., Miss, or Mrs., or whatever, then you should speak to whoever is organizing the meeting and make sure you find out before then. And then during your meeting, you can refer to them as Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith until such time as they tell you, it's okay, you can call me Bob, or it's okay, you can call me Jane. And then from then on, you can use their first name. It's okay. One special one is Ms., which is written capital M, small s. And this is traditionally being used for women where we don't know if she is a wife or if she is single. And this term came around when women had started to go into work, started to go into companies, and didn't like to be determined by their married name. And so they became Ms. So if you cannot figure out if this woman is married or single, don't panic. Just use Ms. Ms. Smith. It's a little bit harder, right? Let me say the three terms. So we've got Miss, very strong S part to that one. Mrs., so that's two pieces, Mrs. And the last one, Ms. So it's much more of a Z or Z sound to that one. Miss, Mrs., Ms. If you're in the UK and you're working in a shop, for example, or a restaurant, something like that, you can use sir. That works perfectly fine for men. We do use madam in the UK, but I think it's really old-fashioned and a little bit weird. But you can use madam. If push comes to shove and you have no choice, you could say madam. Madam, is there anything I can do to help you? You could use Ms., I suppose, at a stretch, But actually, it's really common for us to just gloss over the name, just not address them directly. When I used to work in retail, I just tried to avoid it. It's not that I'm being rude, it's just that I'm finding other ways. So if I am, first of all, asking them, I might say, is there anything I can help you with? Just give me a shout if you need any help. And then if I want to speak with them, I might give them a wave or I might tap them on the shoulder and say, just let me know if I can help you with anything. And very often I wouldn't say anything about Mr. or Ms. or ma'am or sir or anything like that at all. I think it is harder in the UK because, as I say, we have these regional terms. It's very common for local people to be using those regional terms, but I just think it's a minefield, so I would avoid it. If you need to refer to somebody, try and use their name. If you are working somewhere and they've given you their card, they're paying you for something, or they've given you a business card, use the name that's on the card, right? They're paying for something and you want to respond to them, you could look at their card and say, Mr. Smith, thank you for shopping with us. That's totally okay. If they've already given you a business card, maybe you're at a networking event. And I would suggest if you're at a networking event, use that term as quickly as you can. Use their name as quickly as you can. So if somebody hands you a business card and it says Mrs. Jones on it, then you could say, oh, thank you very much. Oh, Mrs. Jones, nice to meet you. Mrs. Jones, what is it that you do? So you're really trying to get your brain to remember what their name is, and it makes them feel like it's more personal. It is absolutely okay to use dear when addressing your letters. Dear sir, dear madam. When you're addressing letters, dear sir, dear madam, and dear Mr. Smith are all perfectly fine. However, I would say if you're addressing emails, stick to hi, hello, great to see you, great to meet you, something like that. If it's a really serious email, if you're in a profession like you're a lawyer or something like that, then you could use dear. It is a more serious note to it, but I would say in general, it's very, very rare for me to receive an email that is addressing me as dear. It's just for written letters. I hope that's useful for you guys. If you have any questions, you can email me at emmazeslenglish@gmail.com. As usual, I will make a blog post about this and I will put it on the blog at www.emmazeslenglish.com. And I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye.